An old ideology is that the conditions you're in change you. Conditions such as scarcity can manifest in a person and change their personality. There are three types of scarcity, which include emotional as the easiest to endure, financial, and physical as the hardest to endure. People don't gain talents due to hard times, but react accordingly to scarcity, typically an emotional change, if at all. One of the easiest types of scarcity to deal with is emotional, even though it brings the most personality change. The dictionary definition of scarcity is the state of being scarce or in short supply. An explanation of emotional scarcity, according to Senhil Millanathan, a professor at the University of Minnesota, is if the mind is focused on one thing, other abilities and skills, attention, self-control, and long-term planning often suffer. When someone is in some type of emotional scarcity, such as emotional abuse, they don't gain talents. You don't see someone being abused by their partner gain the ability to cope or fight back. This type of emotional scarcity exudes itself in sudden personality change. The psychological symptoms of abuse include aggression, depression, anxiety, and a sudden withdrawal in social interaction. Nowhere on that list of symptoms does it include a sudden gain in talents that are beneficial. When someone is struggling with emotional scarcity, like abuse, they don't gain talents, they only react emotionally. We can see this same emotional reaction in the wild truth. At 28, I already had 2 failed marriages. I knew I'd say yes if he ever asked. He wanted the commitment. I did too. McCandless 189. Creed wanted the commitment that she had in her past 2 marriages. She was feeling emotional scarcity connected to commitment that she didn't have. Kareen had just gotten out of a very abusive relationship and felt lonely without someone to rely on. She was feeling emotional scarcity because she didn't have someone to support her, so she rushed into another abusive relationship, just like the one she had before. Whenever she got back to her normal status, she changed back to normal. Abuse doesn't change the skills you possess, it simply changes your personality. We can see when Kareen gets out of a relationship, her personality changes, and when she gets back into a relationship, she turns back to normal. This correlates with emotional scarcity. Someone will encounter scarcity and their personality will change, but when it goes back to normal, personality will also change back to normal, leaving them unchanged. The second most severe of the types of scarcity is financial scarcity, where you can see there's only emotional change and no discovered talents. Financial scarcity can be classified as poverty. In America, there's a nationwide opinion of poor people that they are lazy or bad people. This perception of poor people is a social representation of someone's reaction to financial scarcity, which translates to other people's as laziness. People do not gain new talents when they are poor, and generally continue with their toxic ways when they get into poverty in the first place. Obviously, when someone is in poverty, their personality can change and reflect how their home life is, but most of the time people will hide the fact that they're in poverty, which can take a bigger toll on their mental health. This shows that people who are in poverty will have psychological changes occur to them, but will generally stick to their same ways, not gaining any new talents. People who get themselves into poverty stay in poverty because they don't change their ways or get any better. Since they are not getting any better, they are not gaining any new skills. Due to that fact, they aren't gaining any new skills, they will stay in poverty, which can rack on their mental state. This means that due to financial scarcity, people will stay in their toxic behavior and have mental side effects. An example of financial scarcity is when Pam knew she had very little money, but would still spend money on drugs even with her pending eviction. They would need extra cash. A lot of money went to dope. There would be mornings when Pam would come home from work and find Ned at Heroin Susie's or wide awake in the living room, on the tail end of an all-night bender with women passed out on the couch. There were evenings when Pam got so high she couldn't walk. Desmond 51. This shows that faced with financial scarcity, she still stuck to her toxic habit. When facing financial scarcity, people will not change their ways or gain new talents. They will simply dig themselves into a deeper hole that will break them emotionally. When people are in danger, they get a rush of adrenaline. The dictionary definition of adrenaline is a hormone secreted by the adrenal glands, especially in conditions of stress. The cause for an adrenaline rush is an emotional and stressful situation. The response to an emotionally stressful situation is a fluctuation of emotions. This shows that physical scarcity can change our emotions. When people encounter physical scarcity, it takes a toll on their mental capacity. When someone is dying or can feel that they are sick, it changes their emotions to be more fearful and conservative. Physical scarcity doesn't give anyone new talents. An example of this is when Chris McCandless is sick in the wild. After weighing his options, therefore, he settled on the most prudent course. He turned around and began walking to the west, back towards the bus, back in the fickle heart of the bush. Krakauer 171. Chris made a decision that he knew was important and chose to lead himself away from safety. After he went back to the bush, he died. In this time of need, he kept on making ill-advised decisions, like he always did. In a life-or-death situation, he went back to his normal ways of making stubborn decisions. He didn't change his actions or skills. He becomes very emotional and starts to reflect on his life and philosophy. He didn't gain any new talents that saved him and taught him how to become an amazing outdoorsman and give him a miraculous recovery. There's an ominous entry in his journal. Extremely weak, fault of pot, seed, much trouble, just to stand, starving, great jeopardy. Krakauer 189. He died and his actions killed him. The hard times he encountered didn't bring anything out of him. Just like emotional and financial scarcity, he only changed emotionally and didn't change physically and succumbed to his old tendencies and actions. Even though it is the most taxing type of scarcity, physical scarcity cannot change a person's actions and only their emotions. And we can see that even some people succumb to their tendencies and it caused their death. If someone dies because of their actions, it is apparent that they didn't gain any new skills. The most severe type of emotional scarcity is physical scarcity. While being the most intense, still doesn't land a person any new talents. The three types of scarcity, no matter how intense, don't give a person any new talents, but simply changes their personality if any change ensues. Emotional, financial, and physical scarcity can only change how you feel and act, and sadly can't give you any new talents, and in many cases people suffer because of their tendencies.